Oh, hey, there we go. Audio. It's important or something. Alright. This is the first time I have streamed in 10,000 years, so hopefully hopefully everything's working. Um Hi, I am Laya Liebeseller. I'm the project lead for Confluence, the TTRPG. Hey, Dicey Amazons, Candy, how are you? Um Audio levels good and all that jazz. Um Alright, well, I am gonna talk about admin stuff. Uh, and I'm gonna turn my phone volume off so that I don't get pinged in the middle of this. Um, alright. Well, might as well get started. How does one do a masterclass in administration and make it like exciting? I don't know. We're gonna figure it out together right now, which is essentially the process for all of my administration. It is figure it out together, I guess. Alright, rad. Thank you, Candy. Okay. Well, I'm just going to kind of have the Google Drive up for you all to see. Right now, what I have on the screen is the welcome packet, which is the thing that I made 3 years ago now, um, when the team was first getting here, when the first part of the team was first getting here. So today, I guess I'm going to talk about the history of the Confluence team and how we moved from a team of one, seven, Vanessa Seven Peterson, to a team of 15 um, over the course of the last over 3 years now. So just to give you all a history of that, and to kind of talk about the process of like what it was to build it, when and why we added people to the team. So that'll be the first masterclass. The next two are going to be on the hiring process, like how did we hire people, what did that process look like? Because ours is kind of weird, and we did some weird stuff, so we thought we would talk about it. And then the last one is going to be on what are the actual tools we use for administration that we found really helpful, especially working with a team full of queer, neurodivergent folks, with a whole lot of different needs, and accommodations in terms of best ways of working. So that's going to be the next three streams I do. And if people are like, these are rad, then then I will do more. But right now we have three planned for the administration on the back end here. I am taking questions. I do have the chat up, so feel free to jump in there, um, stop me, ask questions, whatever. Here for it. Um, so I guess I'll just start at the beginning with Confluence. I'll give a little bit of an introduction. You've probably seen it in other streams, but kind of give it from the administration side. So Confluence is a TTRPG that was originally the universe for it, and the original um, copies, which were all only ever made it to playtesting, were made by Vanessa Seven Peterson in 2017, and then again in 2020. A lot of the games that Publishing Goblin puts out generally, so the card games like Zoetrope, and some of the board games as well, are all in the larger universe that Confluence sits in. So Confluence is like one piece here, and then a bunch of other games. What We Possess also is from this universe as well. So most of the games that Seven works on are all from this world that was originally generated when they were 17, 14. I don't really know. In the teen years, Seven started thinking up this world, and it's just kept going, and been really fruitful until now, where they're making a whole career out of the ideas that started there. Um, so Seven wrote two books on their own, two previous versions of this game, and did playtesting again in 2017 and then in 2020. And after both of those playtests, decided that what they really needed was a team, that they couldn't do it on their own. And so the origin story of that is that the Alleyman tarot deck dropped and made $1.7 million, and Seven took that and started the first part of this team that we know today. We know and love today. So the first, I guess, was me. I playtested both 2017 and 2020. I was just like, Seven, I love this universe. Can we do something with it? Seven decided to bring me on. I had already done a little bit of game design, but this was really my first like deep foray um, into TTRPGs on the design side. So I've been playing a lot of games for a long time and designing my own stuff for a while, but this was the first thing that would like be published. Um, so I came in, and then we brought in a couple of other folks. I believe the first two were Daniel Hennigan and Lauren Peacewetter. We can look up their last names right now on my on this little team thing. Maddox. Completely wrong last name. That's great. Lauren Maddox, an editor and another designer. And from there, we brought on Takuma as another designer, so Takuma Okada as another designer. Lauren has been an editor for many years, has played TTRPGs for many years, but this was the first time that they were getting into actually editing for a TTRPG, editing for a setting for a game like this. Danny had also been playing for many, many years, had done a lot of GMing and creating storylines for live action roleplay and that kind of thing, but this was also his first time on a team like this. Takuma is a designer, has been a solo designer for many years. I think 4 or 5 years, 5 or 6 years now, has put out several amazing games. But this was the first time that um, she had really worked on a game of this kind in terms of a team like this as well. So one of the things that we really stressed in the beginning was creating a team of people who could grow along with us. Because I was brand new. Had done administration before in a lot of other contexts, but I had never done it for a design team. So one of the things that we started with was we really wanted to give opportunities to people who were just starting out that could grow with us because we were learning a lot too. And so that was kind of the initial, the very initial team. And then obviously seven as well. From there, within I don't know 7 or 8 months, Candy coming in with the last name for Lauren. um, we brought Candy on, and Candy had just put out her very first one shot. She's in the chat now, so if you have any questions for her, you can also ask. Um, but she just put out a one pager about vampires, I think, um, for a game jam, if I wanna say that right. Um, and I had been following her on Twitch for a long time because she does Dicey Amazons. Dicey Amazons is really fucking cool. And one of the things that we realized very early on with our very initial team of Danny and me and Seven and Lauren was that we had one particular skin tone. And that if we were going to write, and we were all also from the Midwest too, so um, except for Lauren. I guess she's from Tennessee. And then the other three of us were from Iowa. So we were like, not only are we all white, we're also all from like basically the same place. Um, and so we need to deeply diversify our team across pretty much like every demographic. We really wanted to get people of different ages and different backgrounds from different places internationally. We wanted to obviously hire people of color, obviously based on the rest of our team that you might know already. And um and so we started with Candy and Takuma, and Candy came on as a writer, Takuma came on as a mechanics designer. We very shortly after that hired Viditya Valetti, who also an amazing designer, and he had done significantly more like group work essentially than the rest of us. He had designed games with other people fairly extensively. And so really brought some of that like, all right, so how do you work with a team though? It was something that we really worked on for a long time was how do we come together as a team? How do we merge our different understandings of what games are, our different understandings of what play is, of like what's interesting at a table, all of that very was very difficult in the beginning to try and come to a consensus about who we wanted to be and about what this game was going to be and what mattered about the setting because we had this amazing setting, right? And a game and mechanics that really needed to be elevated to the level of that setting. And so we were like, how do we do that? So we started mostly with people from the United States, currently living in the United States at the very least. So that was the first kind of round. Um, and then we sat with that team for about a year, and so we decided, well, we have a little bit more money, time to expand our team one more time, get some new perspectives. And I'll be going into how we actually did the hiring of all these rounds because we learned a lot between the initial phase of, I don't know, let's hire our friends, to people that we like saw that we thought we might work well with, to now we're going to do a more in-depth interview process because actually that's really important to decide like how like do the people that you're going to hire actually mesh with your team. Crazy thing to think about actually doing. um and then kind of our last hiring round, which was maybe 18 months ago, 19 months ago, where we were like, all right, so we're really going to expand our team. We almost doubled our team. Six, seven, we went from 7 to 15. So actually just a little bit more than double. Um, and um, learned a lot in that time. So then what we did was we sat down. Seven and I really sat down, and we were like, all right, so what do we what do we need? What kind of skills are we currently lacking? Oh, Shan! My God, I forgot Shan. Shan was our initial artist at the very beginning. Shan actually did art for the 2017 and the 2020 games from the UK. Longtime artist, has been doing art for TTRPGs and comic books for a really long time. Shan Banian is amazing. Cannot believe that I forgot them. Live streams. They're great. Um, Shan has been working on this project and with Seven probably for 6 or 7 years from now. They've really been a part of pretty much every single one of Seven's major projects. They did a couple of cards for the Alimantero. I know, Candy. I cannot believe I forgot Shan. Shan's gonna be so mad if they watch this. They're gonna be like, Leia, how dare you? But in a very cool British accent. Um, yeah, so they did art for the 2017, 2020 versions. They did art for cards for the Alleyman deck and the Alleyway Oracle. And they've been involved in a couple of Seven's other projects as well. And they just put out some really cool comics, um, including a kind of spicy comic, which should be coming out soon. So that'll be cool when that gets announced. And yeah, so Shan was here at the beginning. All right. So, cut again to 18 months ago. We decided we needed to you know, grow our team. So Seven and I talked about what kind of roles we wanted, and then we talked to the team and we were like, "Hey, who else do we need?" So we hired a bunch of people, and most of these people are not from the US. So this time we really focused on the international hires, attempting really deeply to bring in more people from really different backgrounds, in order to increase our ability to write really dynamic settings, that include a lot of different kinds of people from a lot of different kinds of places, and really be able to show the breadth and depth of voice that we wanted for this world, which is something that we had started, uh, but we needed more of. So then at that point, we hired Alex, who was our jack of all trades project assistant. They're from California. He's great. Really fun to work with. Really, what they ended up doing was bringing together our team, being able to. He has this ability to sit on a lot of different teams and uh, and collate information for people, in a way that keeps all of us apprised of what's going on, and that's something that I really needed as a project manager because it's like all of a sudden I went from having a fairly small team of 6, 7 to a team of 14 or 15, and um, to say that there were bumps in the road of the administration. behind the scenes would be understating it pretty significantly. So Alex has a lot to smooth out that process and brought us Asana, which I'll talk about in a little while. That's a project management tool that we have found particularly useful. We also hired Chris Viana. Chris Viana, I think that probably she's the person that I'm most surprised that we were able to hire. She's from Brazil and works for Evil Hat along with a bunch of other projects. She's amazing. She's our layout artist and really takes everything that we do and elevates it so much. Um, then there's Kiana, and Kiana Shaw is Canadian, and or is living in Canada now. I actually don't know if she's from Canada. But they have been working in TTRPGs a long time. Also do like narrative for video games and that kind of stuff. Very cool. We brought her on specifically as a settings writer, and I don't know what else to say about Kenna except for she's great and has written some really cool stuff for the Motley Coast that I hope you all have maybe already seen if you're in our playtests. Sebastian Yu, also currently based in Canada, maybe the coolest person on the team just in terms of haircut uh, and style. But they are our second editor along with Lauren. Um, just a really amazing all around. Has that ability to really like give you an edit and not feel like you're being critiqued at all, which I appreciate a lot. And they've been working a lot on our design guides too, so you'll see some of their work with the So You Want to Build It guide that will walk you all through an incredible number of our tools and teach you how to actually build your own tools in our game if you want to. Shabam, also a settings writer who moved from a settings writer to an admin person and is now the creative lead. Candy also moved from a settings writer to an administration role and is our QA lead essentially. What do we call you, Candy? The lore queen originally. Candy makes sure all of our stuff is in line. Um, Then there's Sin, who's in the Philippines, and I can talk all day about the fact that, especially here, where we increased our team, we went from having all of the time zones in the United States and like North and essentially all the time zones in North and South America, outside of the ones on the very edge because we have some weird ones in Canada that go like a half hour, and then London. Uh, Now, as we move to this team, we also have India and the Philippines. Sin, Sin works almost on American time, but lives in the Philippines, and is an amazing designer. So they were brought on um, as a mechanics designer, and also moved to be a part of the art team, as they have a lot of layout and art experience as well, and is currently doing a ton of marketing stuff for us too, which is great. And that's everybody. You've now been introduced to the team as they were brought on um, over the last 3 years, which I can't believe that actually that it's been over 3 years now, but it has. June 2021 was when we started. Um, so to give you all just a little bit more history, I guess, is when we started with the original cast of five. So that was Seven, Lauren, Danny, um, me, and Shan. We were like, we can get this project done in a year. It'll be to print in a year. It's gonna be snap done. We got this. Um, and obviously 3 years 3 years later, and we are still working. And it's going to be 4 years before it's complete. That's probably the first like pitfall of administration that happened. I did not start as the project lead either. Seven was really the lead in the very beginning, Um, and as we started, one of the things that Seven and I agreed on very early was that we wanted a collaborative, collective process for administration. So instead of having a project lead, Seven was the owner of the company, but really wanted to be able to give this idea that they had had and give it to another team to be able to change. So even as they were the lead, even as they are the ones that paid the bills and did that kind of stuff, that really Seven was there to watch it change. And I was like, I mean, I can do the back end administration stuff, but I'm not going to be leading this team. Like, this is going to be a collective effort. Um, and when you have a team that small, when you have a team of five, it is fairly simple actually to have a pretty collective process. Um, there are different times when different people will kind of take the stage as the leader, and um, and and like really make that make that space their own. We brought on Takuma pretty shortly after that. Um, and one of Takuma's greatest talents is their ability to take something that is a very wordy, arguably too wordy, which is a problem Danny and I have in particular, and be able to really like tighten it up and be like, all right, so this was your core concept. It was a paragraph. I turned it into a sentence. Um, and so in the very beginning, we were really Danny and I were really and Seven were really into the idea of having like a very like big robust game, and Takuma was like, how can we make it smaller? Right. And so we in the first iterations of the game, it was taking this old material, two full books of material, and you have to understand that these are just the finished books. Seven also had books from other TTRPGs that they were working on that are in a similar vein to Confluence, or a part of the longer history of Confluence. So we were also taking all of that material and um, trying to merge it into a game that made sense. So that was like the first portion of this time was Takuma being like, how can we make it smaller, and Danny and I being like, how can we make it bigger, and then eventually how do we find a middle ground between those two things? What does it look like to have a game that can cater to those who like the smaller kind of game, and those who really like the robust mechanics of a game? How do we find balance between those things? And as Candy has pointed out, we had so many iterations of the mechanics and the settings. Um, Even after we started writing, we had several evolutions, pretty massive evolutions of both. I think by the end of our first year, we had five different iterations of the mechanics, not fully fleshed out, not fully done, but we had five different core mechanics that we had tried and tried to mesh with the setting, and trying to have mechanics um, that really uplift the setting, and finally settled on one after that. And what I'd say about that is like one of the things that I have learned as an admin, maybe much later than I wish that I would have, we'll say, is that having a really firm timeline and a really solid deadline to say like, nope, this is when it needs to be done is really important. And trying to strike a balance between how to create something healthily and how to get it done in a timely fashion is really hard in capitalism. It's actually not something that I feel I or our team have perfected by any means. Um, I feel like I'm rambling, but that's okay. Um, so yeah, so in the beginning we were doing a lot to figure out how do we. So after we brought Takuma on, after we brought Candy on, after we brought Viditi on, we were still very much in this space where we wanted to have really collective action. We wanted to have really a collective process. We didn't want anyone to necessarily be a lead. We wanted there um, to be significantly more collaboration in that space in a way that is pretty different from the industry standard, right? Because from what I understand of the industry, noting that I have not worked in the TTRPG industry, so this entirely comes from other people, is that you get a brief, a writing brief, and you're given that writing brief for mechanics or for settings, and you then fulfill that, and it goes to the editors, and then it goes in the book, however it's edited, and you get paid for your writing. But there isn't so much back and forth a lot of time. Unless you're like a solo creator or a very small team that's writing it, like if you're getting hired to write a particular part, say for a Pathfinder section, or um, for like some of the larger games in the world, um, that you don't necessarily get a say once it's out of your hands. And that's not something we wanted to bring here. We really wanted to bring all of our designers and our writers together to say, what do you want this game to be? How do you want this team to run? Um, and we did that. So one of the way that we actually did it was we split it into like a very small admin team. So that was Seven and I in the beginning, and that admin team was really there to make sure that there was administrative support, right? That you had things like this welcome packet get created, that you had information being collated in a central space so that everyone had the information they needed. And then we had a settings team and a mechanics team. And the settings team job was to write the settings, to decide, given all of this information in all of these books, also all of this information that only lives in Seven's brain, um, given everything that has happened on this planet the last 20 years, since this game started being formulated in Seven's brain, how do we want to take all that information and produce it into the thing that we have today, which is the Atlas of Azuria? The mechanics team was made to make the mechanics for that world. And one of the things that happened with that is that we found out, I would say probably hmm, by the end of the first year, that actually created was two silos. So instead of having like a mix, like a marriage between the settings and the mechanics, we actually ended up with these two silos. The settings making things and giving that information to mechanics, mechanics making things, giving that information to settings, but not really being able to bring them together so that the settings and mechanics team were working collaboratively and collectively in their pods, but they weren't necessarily doing that together. And that's not to say we didn't talk or things like that, but there wasn't administrative support for the marriage between the two. Um, and so then we started trying to figure out, well, how do you produce that marriage? How do you actually bring that together as one conglomerate? So we had like a town hall after the first 18 months that we had been running to try and figure out how to merge these things. We massively changed up what settings information we were including. We started to have more conversations between the mechanics and the settings. We finally got into playtests with more than just mechanics. So mechanics had been playtesting, but we hadn't had the settings playtesting the mechanics yet, because again we had gone through all of these iterations of all of these rules. And so it always felt never ready. That's one of the things that I would say. Just playtest. Just do it. Just get it out of the house. Just push the baby into the world. And if it falls out of the nest, like go get it and bring it back and make sure that it like, becomes an adult, but like push it out early and see what people have to say about it, because I do think that we waited too long at every stage to have it play tested. I don't think anyone on my team would actually disagree with me about that one. Um, but yes, we started playtesting together. That was a huge boon. I think playing together in a space where you're creating places of play is like with TTRPGs, because when we play a TTRPG, we're playing. Um, that it's important to play together. Wild concept, I know. Um, and so yes, we started playing together, and we started playing the system together, and we found out where some of the holes were, and where the mechanics weren't really married to the settings as well as we would want. And so then we changed up entirely how the settings was being done, and we expanded the settings information pretty massively. Um, we also changed our mechanics pretty massively during that time to meet the needs of the setting that we had changed. And then we stayed on that bandwagon for a while. And what I'll say about administration, like in this initial, I don't know, hour of time, gosh, it's only been half an hour. How am I going to fill this entire stream? I don't know. If there are questions, let me know. I am happy to answer them. Um, but one of the things that I about administration that it's an ever changing process. There's never a time where you're like, all right, this is the process, and this is what the process will be forever. Like that literally does not happen. I think, especially when you're in a space that's um, actively attempting to buck the regular system, because we were really trying to be pretty radically anti what the industry has a tendency to do, which is like run people really ragged, which is to be really unhealthy in a lot of ways, because Silicon Valley and video game and computer culture really has impacted a lot of the TTRPG industry, as well as like kind of initial um, those initial days of D&D where you really had people doing a lot of free labor, like just an incredible amount of free labor. So not only do you have this like meet your deadlines and meet them now of that kind of Silicon Valley mentality, you also have the, well, I mean, it's art for art's sake. Why would you be paid? These two things come together in extremely toxic ways. And so one of the things that we talked about on the team over and over and over again was like, well, we know that we want to do this in a more healthy way, in a more collective way, in a way that produces friendship between teammates, as well as being good colleagues to each other. Um, we wanted to make sure to support neurodivergence as opposed to working against neurodivergence or saying like, hey, if you've got neurodivergent problems, too bad for you, figure it out. We wanted to create processes that really supported that, and what that means is that it's ever changing, it's ever growing, it's ever evolving. There's never a time where it's just like, yes, now we have the administration figured out. It's been 3 years, and I think I'm still like, all right, so what's the next massive turnover? So one of the things that we started doing to try and address some of those kind of like really consistent changes, um, was to continue to have these conversations, like the town hall. So when we did the town hall initially, we did this thing where we just had a week, right, where we had two town halls to make sure that everyone could be there, and get all everyone's ideas about how we should function moving forward. The second one of those that we did, which was last August, and this was with the full 14 people on the team, is that we did an entire month where we were kind of working on some other stuff still, but really in that month our whole job was to decide, hey, there are some things not working. Um, how can we change them? Like, what are the things not working? What are the ideas to address some of those things? And from that, like, we decided to implement Asana, for instance, and get some help really tracking our tasks in a different way, because we had been entirely on Discord before then, which we still are mostly on Discord, but we have now implemented Asana and a bunch of other things that came out of that. So one of the major administrative things that I do that I feel has worked. I don't know if everyone would agree with me on that one, but it's just to stay in pretty consistent contact with my team. So we had that month-long retrospective where we created North Stars for the game and for the team. So like what really are our core values as a team? What are the things we want this game to be at its core? Um, and we had a lot of we I sent out a lot of forms with a lot of questions that asked people to really think critically about the processes that we had and how they were supporting them and how they weren't supporting them. And what were the ways that we would be like we could move forward with processes that made it feel like we were all sharing the load a little bit better than we were before. Um, and then from there we implemented them. So that has been kind of the last. That's like probably the next 8 months was implementing all of the different changes. We massively shook up how the teams functioned. We no longer had a settings and mechanics team. Instead, we made teams based on the place being written so that every place had both settings and mechanics writers on them. And we massively expanded the administration team. So as I said before, Shabam and Candy both moved to administrative positions. Before that, we also had Shan move to an art lead position. And um, we also hired Indrani several months before that. Indrani is also from India, and she was our social media lead. So she got hired several months before that, so that we would have like a marketing lead, so that people weren't as stretched thin or on so many teams as they were before. Uh, and that's the history of Confluence, really. Um, I'm looking at chat to see if we have any questions. I don't think that we do. That is okay. Um, hmm. Well, what to talk about from here? Because that was my plan, was to talk through all of that today. Oops, sorry. Um, I feel like I needed like a video game to be playing along with this, so that there was something more dynamic on the page. Um, besides just our list of things in our original welcome packet. I am gonna wait for some questions maybe. See if we got any at all. I don't actually know if maybe Candy you're the only one here. I'm not sure. Oh no. Confluence video game. Confluence video game is like a decade from now, Candy. That's when Confluence video game is. Also, hi Chris. Um, you just came in while there's like relative silence because I got through everything that I wanted to talk about today in terms of introducing everything, and now I'm trying to think of something else to talk about. We introduced the team and the history of hiring and the craziness that is doubling your team over the course of 3 months. Um, I don't know what's interesting about admin. I find admin really interesting. Like I really like the processes of administration. Actually, I in my life outside of TTRPGs. I'm a cultural anthropologist, so I get a lot of joy about figuring out how people work and being able to create tools that help people work in a way that makes sense for them, um, which is why probably I became project lead in the first place. um, because I do just enjoy um, doing things like this welcome packet, which I provided for Candy. Was there a welcome packet for you when you came on, or was the welcome packet post you? I actually don't remember now. I feel like I had a welcome packet for you, but I don't actually remember. Anyway, I made this welcome packet. Probably one of the best moments of my life was when Shabab was like, the everything about the hiring process was so organized, and I was like, what do you mean? I felt like it was the most unorganized thing in the whole world. Um, so one of the things that I learned is actually it doesn't take a whole lot for people to be like, there's any organization here at all? Oh my gosh, wild, crazy. Um, we definitely have not always been perfect. Um, I don't know, Chris, Candy, are there any admin things you think would be interesting for me to finish up on in these last 15 minutes for this introductory stream? No, I'm just waiting for the lag to catch up with me. Sometimes I think about the fact that I used to stream like almost daily, and now I haven't streamed in like 3 years, and I feel so rusty. Oh my god, the time zones. The time zones. Yeah. Okay, yes. I can definitely talk about the time zones. You know what? I'll talk about the time zones and I'll talk about oral processing versus um, pre and post processing as my last two things. So, in Confluence, we have the Philippines, India, um, all four US um, time zones, which includes everyone from Canada and Chris in Brazil. And then we also have London. And so I think the most amount of distance between people right now, that's between our Pacific, our our PST in the United States and our Philippines SIN is like 15 hours right now. Um, So what that means is we have to find meeting times that work for everyone. And finding meeting times that work for everyone is awful. Just for the record, we do a lot of when to meets. When to meet, amazing. If you don't know when to meet, I will introduce it to you right now. Um, when to meet is a lovely tool. It allows you to choose different times and um, different days. Over here, click on calendar days, and then you just make a title, and it creates the event. The really cool thing about this is that every single person will look at it in their own time zone and be able to put in the times that they are available, and then everyone populates to a single calendar, and you can see where everyone overlaps and decide when you're going to meet. Hence the when to meet. Love this tool. A lot. We have so many when to meets. For a while in the Discord, we had a when to meet channel because we had so many meetings. Um, and and the other tool that I highly recommend if you are working across lots of time zones is Hammer Time. Now, this only works in Discord, which is the most unfortunate thing about Hammer Time. But the cool thing about Hammer Time is that you can put in the day and the time that you need, whatever that time is, and you can copy and paste it directly into Discord, and whoever's looking at it will see it in their time zone. So if I set a meeting for 5 p.m., people in on the West Coast will see it as 3 p.m. So everyone knows what time they're actually coming to the meeting. Getting everyone in the same room, knowing what time they're supposed to be there. I used to, before I knew what Hammer Time was, Shabam introduced me to Hammer Time, and I will be happy about that for my whole life. Um, it was literally to list out the time of every single person for every single meeting. So you'd have like meeting, here's this agenda we have, and then also these three lines of all of the different times. Um, all the different times that that we needed so that everyone was aware. One of the biggest things about being an admin is making sure that everyone has the information they need at any given time. And it means sharing the same information multiple times in multiple spaces um, over the course of like a week. So if I want to set a meeting with someone, generally I'll have it on the Google Calendar, and then I'll also post a reminder day of, which will have the time of the meeting or the number of hours until the meeting, and then also an agenda um, and that kind of stuff. So really, you just have to, it's really about sharing information more times than you think you need to when it comes to setting meetings, especially when you have lots of people in a lot of different places. Um, Google Calendar is also really great. I know that there are lots of calendar apps out there. Whatever people are using is totally fine. But the nice thing about Google Calendar is it does work across all the time zones, so you can be pretty certain that people kind of know when they're supposed to be there by just looking at the shared calendar. Um, when it comes to the actual calendar, I what I will say is the way that I do it is not like in terms of like knowing when to set meetings. Um, as an administrator is not the way that I would recommend anyone else do it, but I have not found a good workaround. So at this point, although I do send out when to meets fairly regularly, um, or I did at one time, I guess I don't really use them a ton anymore, is that I just kind of know everyone's schedules. So everyone has sent me their schedules, and I know basically when they're going to be available. One of the biggest complaints about the when to meets from my team was that it's like, well, there's just so many steps in between saying that you need a meeting and then actually having the meeting on the books. Like there's so much time in between these things because you have to make the when to meet, then you have to wait for people to fill out the when to meet, and then you have to find a time to actually schedule the meeting. And all of our people are freelance, so that means no one is necessarily on when you are. We're also obviously across the globe, so not everyone's on when you are, and that means that like setting a meeting could take 3 days, which for some meetings just wasn't something that was doable. And so my workaround for that has just been to kind of memorize everyone's schedules. Now these are basic schedules. I don't memorize like this person has a doctor's appointment today, so I know I can't schedule their normal hour. But it does mean that I can schedule tentative meetings and then make sure everyone can be there. And as long as everyone can be there, then the meeting can just change to an actual normal meeting as opposed to a tentative meeting. Um, being able to keep everyone's schedules in your brain like that really only works. I think that even if I had like two or three more people, I wouldn't be able to do that. Because it would just be too many schedules to keep in mind. And also That's not. No one else can do it then, right? One of the things that Shabam was like, Leia, how do you schedule meetings? And I'm like, I just know it in my brain. And Shabam is like, Leia, this is not an okay thing for you to do. You cannot just have all of the administrative processes in your brain. That is not acceptable. And Shabam is right. So one of the things I have tried, I have come out of some pretty toxic administrative spaces where the administrator really is the person that knows everything, and they have to be the person that handles everything because no one else knows how to do it, and that's the way the system is designed. And so that is one of the things that I have been actively trying, often failing to unlearn, is that actually it's better when all of your processes are out in the open for lots of people to be able to use, and be able to utilize. Because when you have one person that has all the central information and that information's not anywhere else, if that person has to go on vacation or something, the entire team doesn't know what the hell's going on. So having processes that can be shared among people is really, really important. Um, I found as administrator, the most important thing for me was having other administrators. So Seven has had to step back from the project several different times to do things like the alleyway Oracle deck and these things like that that needed more of their attention. And for some of that time, I was the only administrator. Never be the only administrator unless you have a very small team. And even then, really, you want to be sharing the load, the administrative load, um, because it can be a lot for one person, even with a small team of 5 or 6. So, that, yeah, I'm still actively unlearning that one. Hey, Confluence Cat has arrived at the very end. Rain is my roommate. You cannot see them, but they are right there. and, and pop into our meetings every once in a while. They are great. They are currently learning how to administer the design of an ARG. Um, and that watching someone else learn administrative tools is always like, oh god, good luck. It's a whole time. Um, but yeah, those that's really what I got. Share the load. Don't do it all by yourself. That's the takeaway. I hope at the end of every single one of these 1 hour blocks is never ever do it all yourself. Chris asked what my favorite part of admin work is. Ooh, my favorite part of admin, that's actually a great place to end. My favorite part of admin, I think, is when everything, like when you see the tools that you have put a lot of time into actually do the thing you wanted them to do. I think that's probably my favorite thing is like, because admin can be kind of a thankless job. um, it can in some ways it's like because it's not like thankless like other people aren't thanking you. It's sometimes thankless in that it is often very unseen labor. It often doesn't produce the results you think it's going to, so you're like, all right, I'm going to make this document and then everyone's going to know what I want out of it. And, and then you make this document, and then like 3 people are like, "Yes, this is the coolest document I've ever seen," and then the other 3 people are like, "I don't understand the logic of this at all." And one of the things that you learn pretty quickly as an administrator is that not all tools are built for everyone, and it's really hard to find tools that work even for the majority of people. Um, and that work seamlessly even for the majority of people. Um, there are a lot of questions that are like, why are there so many administrative apps out there. Like so many different ways to organize information for projects. And it's because there are so many different brains. We kind of had this idea that there's like neurotypical and then there's neurodivergent, and those are our two types. That is not true at all. Um, People organize information in different ways in their brains almost individually. Like it's not entirely individual. There are definitely patterns across people, but in many ways, every person has a different way that they find the most logical. So I think the coolest thing is when you have a tool and it really does make things easier, because that's what administration is supposed to do, right? It's supposed to make things easier. It's supposed to streamline stuff so that the creators get to create and the designers get to design and the writers get to write, and that's what they're worried about instead of a lot of the administrative stuff, so they have all the information that they need in order to do their task, right? It's like, so if you have 800 pages of stuff that you need to know in order to do this task, especially with a world this size, being able to create an administrative process that makes getting that information easier, so you can just write and not spend so much time reading those 800 pages. Like that's the purpose of administration. So when it goes really well and you see someone take something that you've designed and be able to just run with it and just be able to like actually use it the way you wanted, that's so stellar. It's 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 a high for sure. That's how I know I'm a nerd, though. Is that like these kinds of tools really make me absolutely actually that happy. Um, but I think everyone knew I was a nerd. I think you don't get to be a project lead of a tabletop role playing game without being a bit of a nerd. So, anyway, it is 2 minutes till the end of the stream. Uh, Thank you everyone for coming. Thanks Rain for popping in and Chris for coming by and Candy for being here the whole time to do support on the back end. Um, Super useful. And we'll have at least two more of these. I'll be doing them once a month. So, not always the same week of the month. We'll be putting out schedules in our newsletter and then also across our social medias. Um, and next week, what is our next week? Oh yeah, next week, Sin and I will be doing a stream about weird Confluence lineages. Which will be fun. So it'll be continuing the stream, our very first stream that we did in June, talking about lineages. We'll be talking about more lineages next week. I can actually hold on. I can pull up. Oh, I know we don't have them on the calendar yet. I was gonna be so cool and be like, I got them on the calendar already. Look at this administrative process. They're not even there. Don't even worry about it. We will have times out for you it's early next week for streams for the month of August. So we'll be doing that. Chris will be continuing her layout masterclass, which will be super cool. Very excited for that. Sebastian is going to be doing their first um, stream, and they will be doing a stream about design guides and how to write them, which will be super cool. And then you will also get another reading from a Clay Witch, a tarot reading from a Clay Witch stream. Um, so we've got a lot of exciting things coming out this next month. It's gonna be super fun. And I hope that we can just like increase what we're doing and give you all more information about what we have learned these last 3 years working on this weird TTRPG project. Um, all right, well, I will see you all another time in another place. Maybe I won't even be the same person I was right now. Who even knows? Confluence is weird. I'll see y'all later.